Pranakasha live stream.
Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Patrick Perez Vidauri. Did I say it right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, this is our second try at this. Yesterday we were supposed to have a Zoom meeting, but then we both forgot it was Super Bowl Sunday. And then today, believe it or not, I fell asleep a half hour before we were supposed to meet. So, my only excuse is that my mom recently passed away, and her memorial was on Saturday.
Oh, geez.
And I'm an only child, so I had to set up the whole thing and then talk during it. And anyway, it all came out really good, the memorial and everything. And then today, what day is today? Monday. So I don't know. That's my excuse for falling asleep at like 7 o'clock at night.
Nobody has
I'm
to
awake.
Know, that's something that should hit the cutting room floor, I think.
Yeah.
Nobody has to know that you're imperfect because you're on the radio, on the podcast, you're perfect. So
yeah. So okay. So the reason we are here is because Patrick is a film producer, and I watched a film that's called In Other Words.
Hang on. I'm a film director, so let's.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I thought you also produced it.
I did, but I mean, my title is director mostly. But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I produce a lot of the stuff I direct, but it's directing more than producing. So
okay.
like the one that I just finished. Anyway, let's.
So for that one, in other words, did you write? But you wrote the script, right? Or was it who wrote?
My wife wrote the script,
okay.
And we collaborated on that script, she and I together, and then she produced, and I directed. But I do produce up until the time that I have to get on set, and then I stop producing, and then the producers take over, and I just direct.
Okay, so let's show a clip of that right now.
Till you experience the kind of love that punches you in the gut, you haven't become a true man.
Remember what we practiced. You see a pretty girl in there? You imagine that girl's head on a turkey, twerking.
Yeah, it can even help even the most awkward person find love with just a simple touch of the boobs. I was gonna say.
He's created the perfect app that finds the perfect match for anyone.
I doubt it could find a match for me. I'm a man of bizarre pleasures.
Sometimes I get nervous.
Don't be nervous. No hablo inglés.
You don't speak English? She gave me your address. Yeah! But she doesn't speak English. How does that work?
The less she can understand you, the better.
Let's go to Mexico, bro!
This is a surprise visit?
Hola.
Hola. Close on this girl today and we go home. We don't have time for this lost in translation crap.
Pues nada en común, estúpido.
True.
True.
Don't say my name.
True.
No. Don't say my name!
In other words.
So guys, that's the movie. And I totally love this movie. Also, the reason I found out about it is because I interviewed and got to know Mr. Brian McClure right there, who is the star of the show. Yet I'll say that this movie was an ensemble cast. So there were quite a few excellent actors, some of them very well known. Everybody was great. The movie was excellent. Cinematography was beautiful, great script, and a fun romantic comedy. Beautiful music, beautiful directing, beautiful editing, the whole deal. And if you watch this movie, you would swear that it had a budget of several $1 million. But much later, I found out that the whole thing was done in like I think $300,000.
Yeah, $350,000 was our total budget.
The only reason this movie is not well known as it should be is because it came out like right in the middle of COVID and never actually got a premiere, right?
Yeah, that's right. But it did get released in 2021 around around this time this month, a couple of years ago, and then it's been on HBO since then.
Right, I watched it on Amazon.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually HBO Max, but it's like they purchased it for 3 years. So it's been 3 years already, and the Windows is over. So or maybe 2 years. Anyway, so it's
Right.
no longer on HBO Max, I think, and it's going to move on to whatever is next.
Anyway, it's an excellent movie, and everybody should watch it. Last I looked, it had a 91% score on Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Tons of glowing reviews, including my own. So, and I'm all for, like, everybody should watch this movie. Now, it turns out that since then you've already done 2 or 3 other movies.
3. So I've 2 films that I directed one was released in November of last year, and one was released just at the end of January of this year. So I have 2 new movies, and then I shot another one last summer that I'm editing now.
Oh, okay.
Editing.
All right. Oh, so you're also an editor.
Yes. I'm a
Okay.
student editor. Yeah, I got a long career in
Okay, so you edited, in other words?
yep.
Yeah, so see, of course, I'm a YouTuber, and so I can call myself a screenwriter, a director, an actor, an editor, and everything, because when you do YouTube, you have to do everything, right? But out in the real world, usually those are all different people. Even though, to me, I don't understand how a director cannot also be the editor. But apparently, most of the time, those are 2 different people.
Right.
Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Editing is what I learned to do it much like you, because I needed someone to cut my material, And when I was in my 20s and I first started out, I was making a lot of short films, and I needed to cut that footage, So I learned to edit. I actually worked with an editor on my very, very first film and learned through him. I took Adobe Premiere or whatnot. And then I continued
That's what I use too.
cut my stuff on Premiere, and then we did the Final Cut Pro.
Okay.
Days, and then I actually got married, had children, and then I was producing television, and that gig ran out, and I couldn't find another gig. And there was an editing gig that opened up, and I just put in my application. I was like, look, I'm a great editor, and I got hired. And so then I started just cutting, and I didn't stop working as an editor for the next 7 years.
Okay.
I just kind of fell into it. And from Final Cut, I moved into Avid. Again, it was like the kind of situation where somebody said, hey, there's this job, it's Avid. You know Avid, right? And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I love that, So you learned it overnight,
Learned it over the weekend, doing the tutorials, went in on Monday, did the test, and I got the job. But that was a daily show. So then now I'm cutting a daily variety show, every single day, straight to broadcast, straight to the air. And
so was that 3 cameras, that one?
That was like 10 to 12 cameras.
Ooh, wow.
It was a big show, a lot of cameras. It was one of these talent shows, kind of shows.
Okay.
And anyway, so that was trial by fire, and I really learned my chops. But then, as I became a better and better editor, I realized that it really improved my directing.
Of course, because you know exactly what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what piece of a shot I need. I know how to cover a scene. I know what, and I can move very quickly because I don't need to a lot of directors, they'll do coverage, which means they'll get every angle of every line. Right. And that takes a lot of time. So one of the ways I could do this film, in other words, for such a low budget, was that I really knew what I was doing. And we were able to shoot that in 17 days. So every shot counts, every take counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were also the director of photography too, or did you have a DP?
No, Istvan Latang. He's a Hungarian. I interviewed a lot. It was just a random interview process, and I met him through. It was a recommendation from our line producer. And I chose him, and he was from Detroit at the time. He was living in Detroit. He's from.
So
Hungary.
This was the first movie he'd done for you?
Yes, this one. In other words, was. But he did the next 3 movies with me. So the other 2 that I have out, Divorce Bait and Townhouse Confidential, which we could talk more about, were also DP'd by Ish.
Yeah, there's some really beautiful. Okay, so the bar scene in this movie is so beautifully. It's so beautiful how they did it. You know, a bar is typically just a dark, dim, dismal place, but the way you guys did it, of course, you used some photographic effects and software and stuff to enhance it, but still, it looks so good. You know,
Thanks.
it was like this. From what I remember, it was kind of this golden kind of filter to it, and the lighting came through, and it was this beautiful.
Yeah, it was all
know.
lighting. Like it was no filters or not really any effects.
Oh,
It was
wow,
all the
okay.
way it was lit. So, hats
Wow.
to Ish, who does really good with lighting.
Okay.
That it was strange because like I was looking for a place to shoot that scene, and we're in Los Angeles, and we were on a budget, and I'm looking at these different bars and stuff, and finally I find this one, and it turns out it's the Hungarian Cultural Center in downtown LA, and it just so happens that like my DP is Hungarian, so we show up, and the people from the Hungarian Culture Center were like, "Oh my God!" They're like, "I love this guy," and everyone's like,
So they're talking Hungarian to
they're
each
talking
other and
Hungarian to
everything.
each other, yeah. And then the red
Yeah.
carpet rolls out. We get whatever we want. They were
Oh,
very,
that's
very
good. So who did you just use? Who did you use for extras and stuff for that?
Oh, my cousins, friends, random people. Like a few of the people in there are related to me. Some of my good
Okay.
first cousins are there, but we also had a producer, an associate producer who secured extras. We paid him
Okay.
like $50 a day for like 6 hours. If we went over 6, we had to pay him 100 or something. So we try to not go over.
So,
6.
oh my God. So they're getting like $10 an hour or
Oh, yeah.
less.
Oh yeah, it's an honorarium. It's not
Yeah.
not minimum wage. Yeah,
Oh, and maybe some pizza and a beer.
yeah, a little bit of pizza. Yeah. But it was a
Oh,
million degrees in there, and
how many degrees?
a million.
Okay, it was in the summer.
It was in the summer, and there was no air conditioning. It had just broken.
Oh, oh my God.
Yeah.
But so it really was like an indie project, but I mean, it didn't come off like that at all. It came off like totally first-rate, industry standard. Again, beautiful shots, angles, all the acting. And what Brian told me is kind of what you just said. Some of these things you only did in a couple takes, and you're just like, okay, that's good, let's move on. And you got like all kinds of.
I've since learned that's what Clint Eastwood does. I didn't know, but he's like very much like, okay, let's see it, and the actor will do the take, and he goes, okay, that's great, moving on, and the actor will say like, wait a minute, don't you want another one? And he's like, why? Did you mess up? You don't like it? What's the problem? Like, why do you want to waste everybody's time?
Of course, nowadays, since it's all digital, you probably can play it right back, right?
Well, you don't, because as a director, you just watch the monitor and you see it. If you got it, you got it. If you're going to stop and play everything back, that'll take twice as long. Okay. And you're going to kill your day. You have to just know you got it, or you take another one.
And so, since you knew you were going to be sailing through it, you expected to get through so many pages of script per day.
Yeah, it's all mathematical. Like, you have 17 days. You have a 90-page script. You have on this day. Like ideal industry standard is like 3 to 6 pages a day. We were shooting like 8 to 12 pages a day.
Yeah.
So we had I knew how many takes I could take. I could make, if you're just timing it out, you're saying, okay, if I have to move on,
right?
If we don't get it in 3 takes, like we're going to start falling behind.
Okay. And then, so how did you line up all these actors?
Auditions or recommendations, like Brian, who's the lead. Brian McClure was recommended by a producer friend of ours. We were looking for someone who had some comedic chops, and we saw a bunch of people, but Brian just stood out head and
The
shoulders.
thing is, I mean, this is like Brian's first time as a lead in a full-length movie.
Yeah, it's
and he did great. And then, so for him, it was this big break.
Yeah.
So so you just, somebody recommended him, they just seen him on TV shows?
No, they hired him. She was a producer who had hired him for a part, and not the lead, but we decided to read him, and that's the audition, and he nailed it. He just was so good. He was so good, and he auditioned with the scene where he's giving the presentation and he faints.
Yeah.
And he just pulled it off like it's difficult to act like you're fainting, in the middle of a presentation. He did that so well. It was like it's a certain level. He plays a nervous character who gets nervous around beautiful women. And he just did that very well, and it's not easy to make that seem effortless. And I think he did.
Right. So at the audition, it was just him, or was there also another actor that he was bouncing off of?
Originally, it's just him. It's a taped audition, so they'll send you the tape, and you'll watch the tape, and then you'll say, okay. Then you'll call him back, and then we have him read with some of the other actresses that we were thinking of putting opposite him. So then you see it's called the chemistry read, right? When you have them act with their potential co-stars,
right? Okay, so you had Brian. So Brian just kind of rose to the occasion. So he originally was going to play what role, if not the lead?
No, that's it. We were looking at him for the lead.
Okay. Yep. Then how did you get Edy Ganem?
Edy was in my first film, which is called Lola's Love Shack, which we did for $45,000 total.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that one about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I was a young pup, and we were having again open auditions, and Edy walked in, and she was a young actress just starting out, but she had it. It's so cool when you find that, when you see that, when someone just walks in the room, you're like, holy shit, this person's
this is it.
Yeah, like they got the it factor. She just had it, and I knew she did, and she came into the audition. She saw the casting call herself and didn't ask her manager or agent. She just came in because.
Okay. Now, you're talking about the first film, or you're talking about
the first film? Yeah, because she was young, and another thing I liked about her is her ambition. It's like
she's got so much energy, and she's so beautiful, and she's got so much pizzazz. Plus, she's a single mom of 2 kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, back then, of course, for that movie, she was probably still a teenager, right?
No, she was unmarried back then. Yeah, she wasn't a teenager, but she played a teenager.
She was then she must have been in her early 20s.
In her early 20s.
Yeah.
And she was still, I think, dating her future husband, her future ex-husband. But now after then, for In Other Words, we just offered her the part. We knew that she'd be great in it.
Okay, you handpicked her. You knew it.
We handpicked her.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then how about
Natasha?
Natasha. Now she's kind of known in oh, come on, I can come up with the word novelas. And novelas in Televisión Mexico, no?
So yeah, she did some of the telenovelas. But she was also, right before, In Other Words, she was in Narcos. She played one of the secretaries, or just a bit part in Narcos. Okay. But I met her, I found out about her through another filmmaker friend of mine who had cast her in a role. Okay. And I saw his film. I thought she was great. And I was looking for a blonde Mexican, actress. It's very specific, Okay. And she's from Mexico City. She's blonde as can be. You can see her right here, and very pretty, very talented.
Beautiful, yeah.
And she just fit the bill just right.
Yeah. Exactly. Does she always, when she acts, is it in Spanish, or does she also speak English?
No, she's actually totally fluent in English with no accent.
So, oh wow! Okay, so
in the
of course
movie,
she didn't play that in this.
Yeah, in the movie she plays someone who doesn't speak any English at all, but she's absolutely fluent in both languages. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, then how about Mr. Kattan?
Mr. Chris Kattan. Well, that goes back. So I got to tell a little bit of a longer story to tell that story, but it's good. I years ago, when I was editing this this daily show that I was telling you about, I got a call. I had graduated from UCLA a few years before that.
Okay. What's the show called?
It's in Spanish. It was called Tengo Talento, Mucho Talento.
Oh, mucho talento.
Yeah.
Wow. And it was on Univision?
I have talent. I have a lot of talent. No, it was on a local, like a smaller, it's called Estrella TV. It's like a smaller.
Estrella TV. It's the TV of the stars. So it's kind of a Dances with the Stars in Espanol type of thing.
I mean, they have a bunch of different shows. It's kind of like the lower, it's kind of like KCOP or something, like it's, or like a local affiliate type of thing. It's not national.
And it was shot in LA?
Yeah, shot in LA.
And it was, and then it was totally for the Spanish audience in LA.
And my, some of my extended family loved the show.
Okay.
But for me, it was just a learning opportunity, and my bilingualism has helped in my life because it's given me a lot of opportunities. And that brings me back to the story. I got a call to translate a script from a producer called Kevin Messick, and he's like, "Hey, I had translated something for him from Spanish into English, and now he's like, I got something for you. I need it. It's written in English. I need it translated to Spanish. It's for Will Ferrell. Can you do it?" And I was like, yeah. And it's my policy.
You didn't say, have you ever heard of Google Translate?
That didn't exist. Yeah, thank God. No, it did actually. It did. But yeah, I used that to help my translation. But anyway, double check stuff. But so yeah, I got hired to translate the script, and my policy, man, is always to say yes to almost everything.
Kind of noticed.
If you can edit, yeah.
That's a good policy.
Say yes, and then you figure it out afterwards. Yeah. But so I got this job translating for Will Ferrell, the former head writer of SNL. Andrew Steele was the writer of the script, and so he and I worked closely together to translate comedy into Spanish, which is hard. Comedy doesn't translate directly. So
because Spanish comedy is a lot. Well, for one thing, what I've noticed, like when I watch Univision and stuff, comedy in Spanish, it's a lot more vaudeville-like. It's in a lot of ways it's kind of more silly and raw, and sometimes maybe a little crass, and you can get away with stuff that you wouldn't in English shows. That's
like the Spanish television shows. They like to be very vaudevillian. You're right, and it's kind of like they call it picardía. Like it reminds me of. I guess there's got to be an English word for that, picardy or something. Picardía. But it's that ribald kind of like naughty, kind of vaudevillian kind of stuff.
And then they do stuff. What I noticed, like I used to watch Sábado Gigante. Back when Don Francisco was on it, in like the early 2000s. And they would do things on that show. It would be a live show. And they'd do things like, okay, now let's talk, let's see, for example. We're talking, the show's going on, and then you go like,
Sorry.
Control GX for a man. It makes me feel like I'm like a young chicken.
That stuff's great.
I use it. Of course. Yeah, so they would do things. They would do a commercial right in the middle of the show, just like this. Yeah. The way they used to do on TV, 20 years or 20 or 30 years ago.
Like 40 years behind.
Yeah. So like you're like in a time warp,
Right, but Matt, this was the head writer of SNL. So it has an American sensibility. Like the comedy is American. It's like absurdist humor almost.
Okay.
And so to translate into Spanish was a stretch, because anyway, so we did it. And this is the film here. It's called Casa de mi Padre.
Casa de mi Padre. So that means the house of my dad.
House of my father by Will Ferrell. And
Casa de mi Padre. So in it, he's speaking Spanish?
Speaking Spanish in the whole thing. So
I didn't know he was bilingual.
He's not. He's not. He doesn't. He learned it phonetically. So like I said, who's going to teach Will Ferrell Spanish? And
God. How's
we
his
don't
accent?
Have anybody. So I said, I know somebody, this guy right here, And
or you could have overdubbed somebody else's voice.
No, it was him. So they said, hey, go up to his house, and if he likes you, you get the job. So I went up there. We hit it off great. We talked for hours, and I got the job. So I taught him Spanish, and I was trying to teach him Spanish, but that wasn't working. So then we just started learning the lines, like phonetically, line by line.
Oh my God.
And then
so he had no idea what he was saying.
No, he didn't know what he was saying. He would just say sounds, And so what happened was he had just done The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg, and they went off on a press tour to Russia.
Okay.
And in the middle of our lessons, right? So then he comes back with
a Russian accent.
No.
That would have been good.
That would have been funny. Yes. So he comes back and he forgot everything I taught him, right? And so we're like two weeks out, and I figured, I was like, look, I got a plan. Have your driver pick me up in the morning, and on the way to set, we'll run that day's lines, and on the way back home, after the set, we'll run tomorrow's lines. Then on the way to set, we'll run it again. So, we'll get to run it twice at least before you go on set. So we did that every day. We studied in the car on the way there.
Oh my.
And it was like, and then he would get to set and he would say his lines, and then everyone in the crew would look at me and be like, "Did he get it? Did he get it?" I'd be like, no, he didn't get it. And they'd be like, "Get in there, go talk to him." So I'd go in there and I'd correct it.
And the audience for this is all Spanish speaking, right?
Oh,
he must still have a horrible accent, right?
He has a horrible accent.
But that's part of the comedy, right?
The comedy, yes, that's part of the comedy. And the way they explain it in the movie, they say like, "Why do you talk so funny?" They're like, in Spanish, they're like, "You were always my dumbest child," like the father tells him. So
Mi niño estúpido.
Yeah, he's like, "El niño estúpido." It's like, "Oh, papa." But it's really
Pero muy guapo.
It's directed by Matt Piedmont, written by Andrew Steele, and starring Will Ferrell, and all-star cast. Nick Offerman's in it. I taught Nick Offerman Spanish. Like, I got to work with a bunch of stars. Anyway,
I got to see this. Is it easy to find it?
It's easy to find it. Casa de mi Padre, the house of my father.
Casa de mi Padre.
So I love this movie. It's hilarious, and it's absurd, and it's surreal. And you'll love it. It's made for English audiences. It doesn't make sense. Like in Spanish, like they don't get it, because it's too absurd. It's not Mexican humor. It's American humor. Oh
my God! So the people that would watch it and like it are people living in the U.S. who are bilingual. Those would be the people that like it.
It's made for like they made it hoping that people would watch a subtitled film, but it's made for people who love Will Ferrell. It's not made for Spanish speakers in particular. It's made for English speakers, as a matter of fact.
Of course, you saw.
They have a Spanish version of Whiter Shade of Pale that is so awesome, sung by a legendary singer from named El Puma, and it's like
they should, instead of calling it El Casa de mi Padre, they should have called it La Casa de mi Gringo.
Yeah, Gringo Casa.
Well, of course, what keeps coming to my mind is Three Amigos.
Oh yeah, that was classic.
Because that one was, and if that movie came out now, the internet would probably crucify it, because of all the off-color jokes in it and stuff.
So many films you can't make anymore.
Yeah, but like my favorite line in that whole movie is Chevy Chase, which is a total Chevy Chase line, where he's like down in Mexico and they're feeding him and he goes, "You guys got anything besides Mexican food?" That just says it all.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm always a big fan growing up of that one. It's like
the other thing I remember is that whole bit about when they go, "So would you say that there's a plethora?"
Yes.
A plethora.
We have a plethora. Yeah. Oh, so we have a plethora. Do you know what plethora means?
Then the other one I remember, I guess now it's coming back. The other thing is like he goes, "Well, boss, she's like a flower. You can't just pull off the." He said something like you can't just pull off the petals. You can't force a flower to bloom, or something like that. Yeah. I can't remember the actual lines.
Talk about anyway, they're like, "And then we will break the horses and ride off on the women." See, you can't make
oh God. So okay, so I'm assuming that all your movies have some kind of Latino connection to them, right? Is that true?
No, but mostly, for the most part,
Okay.
yes. For the most, so I just did this one. I just finished. It just got released January 31st. It's on demand right now. It's called Townhouse Confidential.
Okay.
And this one, I was just hired. I was recommended by the cinematographer, Ish, because he was already hired on the project, and he said, I've worked with this great comedic director. It's a comedy. He's like, I recommend Patrick. So I interviewed along with 3 or 4 other people, and I got the job. Now, this is just a New York City comedy. It was nothing to do with Latino at all. There was
Except
one
there's a lot of
Latino
Latinos
character.
in New York.
There's a lot. And she did write in Detective Ortiz. And, anyway, so there was one Latino character. But it's an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
So it's a spoof of Pride and Prejudice set in the West Village. I actually happened to go to Columbia University. The main character in that movie, George Barrow, who's the love interest, who's kind of the Darcy-esque character, he went to Columbia, and I don't know if that helped me get the job, but I did. I lived in New York, and I know New York. So
New York.
New
You're from New
I had
York?
a great
Wow.
food. Filming in New York City, one of the highlights of my life so far, man.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
My father lived in Manhattan.
Oh yeah.
He actually did. Lived in Michigan, Frankenmuth, Michigan. But oh God. So now I have to ask again. So, have you done any acting in your life?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was in grade school, high school, college, I did a lot of acting as a kid.
Okay. Okay, because the thing I ask is what I've noticed in my theory is that the best directors are also actors, so that they, and in a sense also, I mean, directing is like being a teacher, and it's like you have to. I think what your job really is, it's more just to inspire your actors and let them be themselves and use their own talent, not put them in a box. And then, I mean, of course, have a vision. Since you're the editor, you have a vision of how it's supposed to look, and you know how you're going to cut it together. So you have to deal with that and all the angles and make sure everybody's standing on their spots and all that stuff. But then you let them be them, right? And it seems like a lot of directors don't understand that.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think part of the reason that my films what works about them is that the actors are good. I mean, the scenes work because the actors they feel, I think they feel authentic and real.
Yeah, you let them breathe.
Yeah, I let them breathe. And I let them bring a lot of their own self to the character. So I do think it's well said. I think, I mean, beyond being a teacher or using my own acting experience to help actors get there, I see myself as two things. I kind of see myself as it's my job to create the ambiance, not only with the cast, but also with the crew, that the whole crew and cast maintains a good vibe on set, so that there's not stress and anger and worry. And, even though we're crushed for time and we have no money and it's hot and we're running out of time, we have to still keep it ebullient and light and cheerful. And people have often said that my sets are the best set they've ever been on. Like they just
you can tell they're all like, folks, I'm focusing on, in other words, because I know that I've watched this movie like 5 times now. I love it. So now I'm going to go to the car scene and the road trip scene, right? You got the 3 guys on a road trip, and that scene worked perfect. The way they're all bouncing off each other, it had everything in it. So was that all fake on a soundstage, or were you actually in the car?
We're actually in a car. Yeah, we're actually in a car on a real road. We couldn't afford a process trailer, so we had a little hostess tray, a little, a rig on the driver's side window, and then another one on the hood.
Of course it works. It actually works better because I can still tell when it's fake.
I know.
But it was way better as the real thing, and the camera didn't shake her.
When there's a camera on the hood, you kind of your view is obstructed a bit, so it's challenging. It's like that was who was driving? Anyway, it was one of the guys were driving. I don't
I think it was Joe.
No,
No,
Joe-
no, it wasn't. It was the
Benny.
Indian guy.
Yeah,
I forgot his name.
Benny was in his character name.
Yeah.
But Rishi Arya.
We saw part of that in the clip at the beginning, but like there's like, let's go to Mexico, foot bros, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe Nunez is a incredible improviser. He went to Second City. He's from
Okay.
Chicago. He came up. He's a master improviser, I would say.
I mean,
And-
I might have to hit you up to help me interview him on this show.
Oh yeah,
Because I've interviewed Brian and I've interviewed Eddie, and I really want to interview Joe for sure.
So of course I cast Joe again in Divorce Bait.
Okay.
Which is, okay, I haven't told you about Divorce Bait, but
Okay.
Divorce Bait is out. Samuel Goldwyn picked it up after a bidding war with Lionsgate. It's the first film I made that got a bidding war.
Oh, great.
And they released it on demand in November. It's doing great. It's kind of a rated R adult comedy.
Okay.
But Joseph Nunez is in it, and he's hilarious again. He's
Well,
just a great improviser.
You know, the thing about, so the great thing about Joe's role in other words, is in a sense, he was the only person that played your kind of stereotypical Latino, where he was sort of cast as the clown, but with a twist because he plays that role, right? But he's a lawyer.
Yeah.
So he's smarter than shit. He knows his deal, yet he's also the clown.
Yeah.
You know? So I really dug that, how you did that, you know?
That's how we thread that needle. So we,
Yeah.
What for me, like being a Latino who's like a high achiever, everyone in my family, I have lawyers and doctors and real estate magnates and everything in my family. And yet I don't never see that represented on film. Like if you're Latino, you're a gardener or a drug dealer or whatever. And it's just like,
right. Or your housekeeper.
Yeah. Your housekeeper,
Yeah.
your maintenance guy, your friendly, lovable maintenance guy,
Right.
And there are that exists, but so does everything else, anyway, so I try to show other examples of Latino. So Joe's the lawyer, but he's also the comic relief.
Right. Well, see, that's another thing that's why I fell in love with this movie is I'm like, okay, the writer, whoever created this movie is obviously Latino, because this is celebrating Latino culture in ways that Hollywood is afraid to. I think
they just don't know how. They don't.
I don't know. It's also the vibe in LA. Like when I was in LA, like I was hanging out at Hermosa Beach because my aunt lived there, and it was so obvious how racist the white people were. And I could see the white people are on the beach, and then Latinos were also on the beach, but they kind of kept this separate, and the white people would kind of look askance at them. And I'm thinking, dudes, you're on Hermosa Beach, and you're acting like the Latinos don't belong here, and you're calling it Hermosa. You don't even know what Hermosa means. So yeah. I picked up on that on the coast. When you go deeper into LA, it's completely different, of course, especially if you go into, the Latino district. It's a completely different place. But like over in the more well-moneyed areas, it's so obvious the class system is still there, Yeah. Like up in Seattle, we don't have that so much, or at least it's not so overt. But so I can see why Hollywood is so prejudiced, because it's built into LA and California.
I think it's because it's always had, like, it was founded by Mexicans. It was a Mexican city Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And they came in and replaced, or, they never replaced, they just came in and, co-occupied it. But if you look at the population of LA, it's like 60% Latino. It's like over 50%, like, and really all of California is now majority Latino state.
Well, every single city in California is a Spanish name.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you wouldn't know it to walk around, but it's like, but Latinos are the majority,
Yeah.
But, I wanted to, for me, I'm that kind of person trying to bridge the gap between the worlds, because I understand both worlds, and not everybody does, so I try to become like the conduit to explain. And I have been, like when I did Casa de mi Padre, I become the conduit between Saturday Night Live, the big stars, and the Mexican world, and same in Other Words. The plot of In Other Words is about straddling the worlds, about going between the two worlds of U.S.
Let's go to Mexico. Yeah.
Right. And it's about falling in love. It's an American guy falls in love with a Mexican girl, a blonde Mexican who doesn't speak any Spanish. Right. And that's another part of it. Like a lot of us Mexicans have blonde in our family. Like my mom looks completely white,
Right. The people with Castilian, basically, that have Spanish heritage.
Yeah, like I did my DNA and I'm like, there's mostly Spanish in there, but we do have American Indian also. We just look, my family looks a little bit more European.
Okay. When you say American Indian, do you mean like Inca and Aztec?
Yeah, Aztec, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, Native American. So it's like I am 75% Spanish and 25% Native. Like
okay, so really almost everybody's Milano then, right?
Mulatto, yeah, like
mulatto,
or not mulatto, it's called mestizo.
Melange, or that's so many different ways of saying it.
Mestizo is the word.
Okay.
So it's mixed, right?
Mixed,
so
yeah.
Mexicans are mixed. So
some kind of mixture.
Usually, some of them look blonde and some of them look dark, and it's like they could be in the same family.
Right.
But I just wanted to, in other words, show the variety of
the other great thing about In Other Words, again, is you flip the formula. Like the standard Hollywood formula would be there's a bunch of white people, then there's a Latino person that's kind of a clown, like the guy who in that 70s show, for example. And you flipped it where the white guy is the clown who kind of bumbles around and doesn't know what he's doing, and he's out of his element. He's surrounded by Latinos and Latinas that are really with it, and they're the smart people, and he's the idiot, right? So you flip the whole thing.
He's a smart guy, but he's not like, he's a tech geek. He's not socially. He's not
socially inept.
Yeah, he doesn't have a good social IQ, and he does kind of have to be guided and like shown how to behave and.
Right, and the way you did it, of course, is you had to do a road trip to Mexico because he fell in love with this girl in a bar who actually lives in Mexico. Right, and then it's almost like The Princess Bride or something where it turns out she's like super rich, and all this, and he's the lower class person. Yeah, she's like this unattainable rich princess, and he's like the peasant.
Huge, he follows her to the winery that she's about to inherit, and it's this huge, sprawling acres and acres of wine, of grapes.
Absolutely beautiful scenery,
and
cinematography in that. Yeah,
and we shot that all in Malibu, by the way.
I heard that. So it wasn't really in Mexico. It was actually in California. In fact, I think it was Edy told me that mansion that you shot it at burned down in the fires, right?
Well, not the whole mansion, but it did burn the vineyards. Like the vineyards.
Oh, the vineyard. Okay.
It made it all the way to just to the walls around the house.
So the house survived, but the grapes are completely gone.
The grapes are gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now there's so many great scenes in this. So, what's the actor's name? The guy with the cowboy hat?
Oh, that's Kiki Castillo.
Enrique Castillo.
Actor, man. He's been in so many things. He was in. I mean, people might know him from Weeds, but he was also in like American Me.
Okay.
Bound by Honor, like all like classic Mexican gangster films.
He was so good. Like I love that scene. Without giving it away, I think it's also in the trailer where he's got the knife and he's peeling the grape and he's like, "When love hits you, it punches you in the gut."
Yeah, he's playing
that's love.
He's playing the magical. He's playing the wise old guy with
right.
But he's such a great heartwarming actor, but he always plays the heavy, like in Weeds, he was the killer. He was the assassin,
Okay.
And he's playing like the guy in jail, like the boss, the jailhouse, tough guy and stuff. But so we gave him a shot to play a sweetheart, the wise old sweet old man,
Yeah, he was so good.
Really happy. Such a talented guy.
That's another reason why I love the movie. All the characters, it's Brian's this quote star. He's got two co-stars, which you can see both either kissing or whispering into his ear. But then you've got all these other supporting actors that are all great. They all have their own moments. They all have great little script things for them, and then they all deliver completely. That's why the movie is so freaking good. That's why I can watch it. I could watch it 10 times in a row. I mean, I could like watch it every weekend and enjoy it.
It's like, as a filmmaker, I've watched it thousands of times. I edited it as well, and I still like it. It's
so good. It's a classic.
I watch it, I'm like, I like this film.
It's like Casablanca. You start to. I mean, every scene. You could just sit there and watch every scene over and over again.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And of course, it helped because I immediately fell in love with Edy's character, because she looked exactly like my salsa teacher from like 10 years ago. And I was like, oh God, that's my auntie. So, and
she's
anyway.
Beautiful. Edy Ganem, yeah, she's a beauty.
Is it Edy Ganem? I've been calling it Edy Ganem. I've been saying it wrong.
Ganem. Yeah, I guess they say Ganem, but
I don't know I forgot how she says it.
She's half Mexican and half like Selma Hayek. She's they're both Lebanese, like part.
Oh, really? She I had her on my show. She didn't say that.
Yeah, well, I don't think she like describes herself that way, but I tripped out because she's like she's the same mixture as Selma Hayek.
Oh, wow.
Selma Hayek is part Lebanese, and so's Edy. Ganem is I think a Lebanese name, not Spanish.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, of course, the other person we have Gal Gadot, who's Israeli, right?
Oh, yeah.
And she's a superstar now because of Wonder Woman.
Oh, she's so beautiful.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of woman for me, man. Middle Eastern or Latina.
Me too.
Yeah, dark hair, darker skin, brown eyes. Speaks about 5 languages. Yeah, wow, okay. So you were just doing, and then you're just a pile of creativity, and then you're just never look back, apparently, because you've just got so many shows under your belt, and within a course of only like a couple of years, right?
Yeah, it's crazy that over the pandemic, I had a creative explosion. It's just like I've directed and edited 3 movies. 2 of them, like I said, are out. Divorce Bait is out with Samuel Goldwyn, and Townhouse Confidential is out with Vision Films. And then we have our latest film that we are working on now. And I don't know if you know, let me just talk a little bit about this, because it's the biggest film yet for me. This is the biggest film I've ever done. Now in the millions, like I'm not making $45,000 films anymore. And we secured, so Edward James Olmos is the executive producer.
Oh, wow. Is he in it too?
No, he's exec produce.
So guys, he's well known in the sci-fi world from Battlestar Galactica. That's how I knew him. At least that's where I. And
then Miami Vice way back in the day.
Okay, right. He's another character who plays the Heavy.
Yeah,
tons of gravitas.
He's also on the Mayans MC.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's in that. It's been a ton.
Do you know the Paulie, the Latino Slant? Do you know that podcaster?
No.
He actually had him on as a guest.
Oh, cool.
I should hook you up with him. I'll try. Me and him are now following each other and DM each other, so I'll hook you up with him. You do great on that show, and
I'd love to.
He would love you, I guarantee.
I'd love to. I was getting at this, is that I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the song Despacito came out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It was Luis Fonsi who was singing it, and with Daddy Yankee.
Such a great song.
Justin Bieber. So we got Luis Fonsi to be in his first major motion picture with us. And so he's the star, and then he wrote a song for us. And oh my God, man, it's so good. The song is so good. I really can't wait to show the world.
Oh, it hasn't come out yet?
No,
is it in Spanish or English?
It's in English. It's in English.
Well, that's another thing about Univision, guys. Okay, Univision is like one of the major networks for in Spanish networks, and one thing they have is they have tons of these soap operas. But what the thing about the soap operas in Spanish is they always have a totally kick-ass theme song that becomes like a hit song just on itself, and it's really a beautiful melody, amazing singer, great story, and you're like, oh. So that you compare Latin TV to English TV to, I don't know what you call it, USA, English TV. There's so much that we don't have that's in like Univision as far as the heart and the emotions and all the stuff that, you can't really describe unless you actually experience it, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I suppose so. But for me, like I'm covering the English-speaking Latino world. Like the world that I'm involved in is like, except for Casa de Mi Padre for Will Ferrell. I make English language films for American. It's more like Asian American or Indian Americans, or we're Latino Americans. I've tried to do everything in English, and if there's any kind of like, I didn't grow up watching Univision. I grew up watching American television. My mom and grandma did watch it though, so I was exposed.
Right. So you were exposed to it.
Yeah, I know what it is, and I know Sábado Gigante, and I know, but I didn't.
Did you ever watch Soñadores?
No, was that a novella?
It was a novella that was on like in 2000. I think it started in 1999 and went till 2002. Anyways, it was one of the novellas, one of the soap operas that I got hooked into, and I watched the whole thing. I mean, there's so many of them. Unfortunately, see, I didn't know at the time. I thought, like other soap operas, it would just go on forever. I didn't realize that they only last like 2 or 3 years and then they end. And I'm like, what? No, it can't be over.
Oh, it's not like Days of Our Lives, which has been on since the 50s or whatever.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I also watched one called Nunca Te Olvidaré. Did you ever see that one? Which means I shall never forget you.
Never forget you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I did have a job. For one of my first jobs in the industry was I got hired by a company, again in the translation field. I got hired by a company that was buying telenovelas and translating them into English. This is called My Network TV, and there was a whole. So
that sounds hard to pull off.
It was crazy. They were insane because they didn't translate. Like a lot of the stuff they bought, like you had to rewrite it from scratch.
Right, because it would come off really corny, I would expect.
Yeah, it would. You can't translate the stuff. You had to just take some of the characters and the concepts and write a whole new script. And they quickly realized that.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, and then did you set them in, were they still in like Mexico City or wherever, or were they now?
No, everything was in the States, and everything was with, American actors, Anglo actors and stuff.
Well, then it wouldn't make any sense because it wouldn't have the cultural context or anything.
No,
right?
It didn't. They were basically just looking to make, nighttime serial dramas,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would sound like an impossible task.
Yeah, and they did a daily. It was another one of these daily. You know how in Latin America they play the stuff nightly, like it's not like every Tuesday. It's like every night.
Like a soap opera where you get.
Yeah, the soap operas are like every night at 5 p.m. It's not once a week type of stuff.
Yeah,
they tried that as well. They were doing every night the same show. Like nobody's in America is going to watch the same show every night. You know what I mean? At least on broadcast.
Right.
Now we do because we're streaming and we watch the same show.
Yeah, we binge them. Yeah. Wow. I don't suppose you watch Cobra Kai.
I saw it. Yeah. That was good. That was cool.
Yeah. Because it also has a Latino element to it.
Well, yeah, the Cholo Madrileño or whatever, the lead young guy.
Yeah.
Great. I thought he was great. And now he's a big star. He's getting cast in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I think as, we need more young Latino actors to be out there, English speaking Latino actors, because so that they could rise through the ranks. It's kind of like,
well, you also got him. I mean, you had him plus his mom. His mom ends up, okay, spoiler guys, if you haven't seen it, close your ears right now. His mom ends up dating Johnny, right? I don't know if you watched the whole thing or not.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, and then his grandma's there too, and his mom and his grandma are always talking Spanish. When they're in their house, they're talking Spanish. Sometimes we get subtitles, sometimes we don't. And then at some point they actually go down to Mexico. He tries to find his real dad. It's a total soap opera in itself.
I missed that season.
That's in the current season.
Yeah.
And so, it does cater to the Latino community there. So it's
really
a crossover type of thing.
The reality of LA,
Yeah.
it's like, that's what LA looks like. It's like, people's parents speak Spanish and the kids don't. And they're living in
Which is a total shame that kids would grow up not learning Spanish if they're,
Yeah,
I think it's
tough. Like my kids don't know Spanish.
Oh, really? Oh, shame on you.
I know, shame on
Okay,
me, but it's like I'm English predominant. Like I could speak Spanish, but it's not.
I need something to smack you with. Okay, my cello bow.
I mean, look, we're fourth generation. The fact that I mean, like,
Malo.
Look, it's tough. It's tough for any buddy to keep their ancestors' tongue alive. Well, my grandfather came here in 1920, right? So it's been 100 years.
I have a buddy.
Yeah.
His name is Tim Richards. He married a woman from Russia. Her name is Tanya. And they have a child who's now 16 years old. And when that child was born, my buddy would speak English to the child, and the mom would speak Russian to the child. Mm-hmm. And the child figured out, okay, there's daddy's language, there's mommy's language. And it was easy to keep them both separate.
Yeah. When you're a child,
great.
Start them young, it works really well. The problem in our case is that neither my wife or I are comfortable speaking 24/7 Spanish. Like I can't. Like it just becomes exhausting. Like it's an effort to speak Spanish for me. Like I have to think about it. And so I'm not. I'm not a native.
Lo siento, señor.
I know. So my first language was English. I learned Spanish second, not first.
Okay, same with me.
But it becomes tough. I don't think usually like immigrants don't keep the language alive past 2 generations or 3.
Okay. Well, I have another counterexample. In my family, my dad's side are a bunch of German Lutherans who arrived in Frankenmuth, Michigan in 1850. And from then until now, they all speak German as well as English.
They still do.
Yeah.
To this day.
Unfortunately, I don't because my stupid high school didn't have German, so I had to learn French.
Let me smack you with something. Hang on.
I know. But the really funny thing is that the version of German they speak is this really weird offshoot. So when they go to Germany, people laugh at it and they go like, "Where in the hell did you learn that? Where did you get this weird?"
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they retain the archaic, a lot because they're talking about 1850s German.
Right,
like,
it's archaic, but then it starts to evolve by itself, kind of like how Australian became its own thing. And so then now, 100 years later, when they go back to Germany, the Germans are like, like the funniest thing that my aunt told me was this German person heard my aunt talking to her sister, and he goes, "When I hear you guys speak German, I don't know whether I should laugh or cry because it's so weird."
Yeah, neither of them are. They're both insults.
Yeah.
The laugh and the cry.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, there's Spanish that's like that. Like the Spanish from Guatemala, for instance, is a very archaic Spanish. They still have a lot of, they say words that Spain doesn't even use anymore,
Okay.
Yeah, that happens where like kind of these offshoots.
And then do you find much of the native language that gets in there a little bit? Native Aztec.
It's funny that
Inca?
people don't even realize that you speak native languages. I'll tell you some Aztec that you use
Okay.
on a daily basis. The word tomato is
Tomato.
an Aztec word.
Really?
The real word was tomato.
Tomato.
That tomato was the word for tomato, right?
Tomato.
It was domesticated by the Aztecs, or the native Mexicans.
Oh, tomato isn't from Italy?
Nope. Columbus took it back. But yeah, see here. Let me. So now, so many people don't know this stuff. It's so okay. So let me give you the foods that come from Mexico is tomato, avocado.
Okay.
Avocado is also an Aztec word. It was called aguacatl.
Avocado.
Yeah, that was the original way to say avocado, and what it means is scrotum. See
Well,
why if you
that
look
makes
at it.
sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Someone rather well endowed.
Yes. I think they used to be smaller avocado, but
Maybe
so
add too much
you got
fertilizer.
squash, avocados, corn, tomatoes.
So
and
corn is maize, right?
maize. Yeah, all that stuff was domesticated first in the Valley of Mexico.
Okay,
And
now can I ask you about the pyramids?
sure.
What's the deal with all these pyramids everywhere in Latin America?
I mean, there are beautiful pyramids all throughout Mexico. They started building pyramids probably about 1,000 years before Christ. Like, so there's one site called Teotihuacan in Mexico City, outside of Mexico City, that was built. Like at this point, it was built 3,000 years ago, and it's a huge complex. And what they found there is, because I was an archaeology and anthropology major.
Oh, okay.
So I specialize in this stuff. Actually,
Okay.
So the ancient history of the pre-Columbian history of Mexico is my specialty. So I'm glad you asked.
I got time.
But what they found is that the city of Teotihuacan was a very cosmopolitan city, much like New York City or anywhere else, where it was made up of immigrants from all over the Americas. They found out that, like, as they did excavations, that they would find in one part of the city the same kind of pottery, for instance, that they use in Guatemala or in Costa Rica. So that tells that's who was living there. Were like the Guatemalans, right? And then they would find the kind of artifacts and stuff that you would find on the west in on the east coast of Mexico or on the west coast. So people were traveling from all over the Americas.
Wow.
In this huge city. As far as like, what they were is that there were ceremonial centers. They're the place where you worship. And all these cities were laid out cosmologically in line with the stars and with equinox and with so there were the cities were a way to align yourself with the cosmos.
Okay, so there was some kind of golden age of civilization in the Americas. Now, had that golden age already passed by the time the conquistadors showed up?
No, they were in the midst of it. And that's one of the great tragedies of human civilization is that this is another thing not many people know, but when Cortez got to Mexico and destroyed it, on the in West Mexico, archaeologists have discovered copper metallurgy. So the I don't know if this is well known either, but Mexicans and the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Inca and everybody didn't hit their Bronze Age yet. Like American civilization was about 3,000 years behind the rest of the world as far as its technological, like intellectually, they were just
way ahead. Yeah.
Way ahead mathematically, astronomy, agriculture, but technologically, as far as having entered the Bronze Age, they were about to.
Of course, I mean, the only thing that matters, the only thing that's great about bronze is that your weapons are better, right?
That's right. I mean, that's everything, but that revolutionized everything. So they had just started mixing copper with tin to make bronze, and that was just starting to happen. But the Aztecs didn't fight with metal weapons; they fought with wooden clubs with obsidian blades.
Did they even fight? I mean, it sounds like they already had a awfully sophisticated civilization. Maybe they didn't really need to war with each other.
I mean, no, the fighting was intense. They had a different way of doing war. They had something called the Flower Wars, where there were like prescribed battles. They're like, okay, next week we're going to meet on the field of battle, and
like a football game.
Yeah, like a football game, but it was war. Like people would die,
Okay.
But it was more of a regulated. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the European like medieval, where it was with honor, like, oh, it's not, you can't stab him in the back, like it wasn't total war. The only ones like
The gladiators, sort of.
right, it's more like the gladiators, or like even the Europeans in like the 18 or 1700s, where they would like, we shall meet on the field, and they had all these rules, like you can't start until the bugle blows, and it was all kind of like, it was like a game almost, it's like, but then like when the Europeans came to the New World, they were like, just kill everybody, total war. And the Native Americans weren't used to that. That's not the way they did war, war was like seasonal. It wasn't permanent,
Okay, so can I ask you this? So what I heard is two reasons. I mean, so the conquistadors showed up and they were outnumbered like 1,000 to 1, and yet somehow they managed to decimate the whole place. What I heard is the reason why they did it was because of smallpox.
Yeah.
And then also there was built into the tradition, there were these legends about these white pale-faced people that showed up, and so there was a certain mystique about them. Is that true?
Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. There was the legend of Quetzalcoatl that he would one day return. But I think that's been over mythologized. That like the practical, the matter is that smallpox ravaged the people. It was a plague like no other, and it was akin to the Black Death in Europe. It was like more than 50% of the people died. It was killing like 70-80% of the people once it infected.
Okay, but still, so if you killed off 80% of the people, you still would have outnumbered them 300 to 1.
Yes, and it's so the best analysis I've ever seen is by Jared Diamond, who wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. Okay, and that one has like, not only does he answer that question, but he kind of answers the question of why do some civilizations, why did some sort of civilizations tend to sort of dominate others? What is it? Is there any innate, are they innately better? And he had a very great hypothesis, which is that no, it really has to do with proximity to resources. Like, any civilization that, where's the cradle of civilizations in Euphrates,
Tigris, Euphrates,
Tigris, Euphrates, or in the Nile, and in China, and in, so all these places, what they had in common is they were right next to a super food source.
Okay.
Like barley, wheat grew wild there. Other places in the world, for instance, Australia, there was no superfood growing wild.
Okay, so what? I mean, so the conquistadors came and took those local resources and made it their
I guess
own?
so. The thing is that they're because the Western civilization and Asian had such a higher quality food source, and metal was just like lumps of it were just right there, so that they entered the Bronze Age earlier. They entered the age of warfare. They had
Iron
metal
Age
weapons.
and the Steel Age.
They were able to crush other people sooner. And then when the Europeans came to the New World, they had guns, they had germs, and they had steel.
Okay. But the thing is, I mean, at some point, the native population would have figured out some way they'd figure out the Achilles heel of the conquerors, and they could capture the guns and learn how to use them themselves.
You would think, yeah. I think that, I don't know if you ever read that one of the best books on the conquest ever is like a firsthand account by Bernal Diaz de Castillo. It's called The Conquest of New Spain. Okay. And it just describes in stunning detail like the march into the city of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire,
which is now Mexico City.
Mexico City. I mean, it's so like it's breathtaking, this book. But Cortez was extremely cunning, so cunning.
Okay.
What he did is he like so many people hated the Aztecs that he made allies with the natives that hated the Aztecs, and he made them rise up in rebellion.
Okay.
So they behind Cortez's 300 Spaniards was 10,000 Native Americans.
So he figured out how to con them.
Yeah, he caught him. He was a deal maker, man. And he had a series of fortunate events that is that's mind-boggling. He found a shipwrecked Spaniard. This is one of the stories I want to tell. Like if
I was going to say, do you ever want to make a movie of all this?
I know the details of this. It's so fascinating and stunning. So there was a shipwrecked Spaniard.
Okay.
2 of them. 9 years they were shipwrecked in the Mayan world. They were in the Yucatan. 9 years before Cortez landed. And when he landed, the Native Americans made him to understand. I guess he brought some Cubans with him from Cuba, where Cortez came from. And they understood the Mayan language. And they told him, there's more Spaniards like you here. They're like, there's some
what
Spaniards
a great
here.
story.
It's amazing. So he's like, send message. So he sent messengers. He sent writing like, come, I am here to save you. Come, right?
Oh
so
my God, that's such a good story.
It gives me the goosebumps, man.
Yeah,
like,
me too. Oh, you got to do it.
So one of them, this guy, his name is Jerónimo de Aguilar. He came to Cortez and said, thank God you're here. I've been a slave. They've had me in captivity. So this guy, Jerónimo de Aguilar, he knew Mayan and Spanish.
Oh,
okay.
cool.
Now you may have heard of Malinche, right? This was her name was she was the interpreter for Cortez. She spoke Aztec and Mayan.
So she's kind of like Pocahontas or somebody like that.
Like Pocahontas. But
Okay.
so she spoke Aztec and Mayan, and Aguilar spoke Mayan and Spanish. That's how, like, if he didn't have that, he had all the intel. He could talk to anybody he wanted, right? He came from Spain, but he's here understanding everything that's going on because he had he got this former slave that now speaks the native language, and this woman who was a noble woman who was sent to the Mayan world. Anyway, so with his team, he was able to conquer. He was able to make alliances with he was able to incite rebellion from other disgruntled tribes and other peoples, and march into Mexico and conquer it.
That would make a fascinating book, number one. But number two, like, you could make the best movie. Oh my God, I can just see it. And if you could bring in the music, like the different native music and everything, and then all the cinematography, I can just see it all. That would be so good.
Did you see Apocalypto, that Mel Gibson film? Mm-hmm. I thought he did such a good job.
You got to do this movie.
I want to do this. I mean, this is the movie I want to do more than anything in my life, like in the world.
Okay.
So, but it's like it's a long way.
It would be very expensive to do it well. It's a multi-million-dollar project.
I need to build my career to a level where someone would give me the reins of that kind of a film.
Well, maybe. I mean, you just got yourself up another notch, right?
I did. I mean, I'm at another level now, and if this one does well, which I think it will.
Ooh, that's inspiring.
Yeah.
If you just found a donor who was like into this stuff.
I have. Yeah, it's such a good story. I didn't even. Okay, here's the best part. Can I tell you the best part?
Okay.
I left it out. This is what I really want to make the movie about. There's 2 Spaniards who were shipwrecked.
Okay.
One of them was named Gonzalo Guerrero, and he refused to join Cortez. And he sent a letter back, and he said, "I am now married to a Mayan princess. I have my ears are pierced. I'm tattooed, and I have kids." He's like,
God, this is such a good movie.
I'm not going back. This is a real story. He taught Mayans how to fight the Spaniards. There's a reason why the Aztecs were conquered and the Mayans weren't.
This is like Dances with Wolves.
This is like,
do you know anything about Hawaiian history?
A little bit, yeah.
The same deal.
Bit. Really? Was there?
Yeah.
No, all I know is Kamehameha and all the king and stuff.
But what happened? It's the same exact deal in a more of a microcosm. The Europeans show up, start imposing their entire culture, and try to dominate, and then they figure out ways to get different factions to war with each other, and eventually they take over the whole Hawaiian Islands and almost decimate the culture that was there. It's the same story.
Yeah.
But oh my God, that would be.
I think it's like Avatar too.
Yeah,
Avatar.
exactly. And if you did it, see, the thing that's so good about this story is you have these 2 specific characters that you could focus on and see it from their viewpoint, and it would be so good.
No, I already have
did it right.
The beginning is like, because what happened is one of them stayed with the Mayans and the other one went with Cortez, and Aguilar ended up being a rich, they gave him lands and slaves and everything. And about 40 years after conquest, there was a battle in Honduras, and they found the tattooed body of a white man amongst after the battle, and that was Gonzalo Guerrero, who had been spending his entire life teaching people to fight against the conquest.
Now I'm thinking about Titanic. You know how Titanic, they find that wreckage and then they build the whole story from there. You could start at the end right there looking at that
exactly
body.
That's what I mean. It would be starting there. So the way it's going to start is that Aguilar, like a messenger comes running to him and say, they found him, he's dead. And then he like slumps into the chair and he's like, wow.
And then you flash back to the entire
movie. Flash back and he starts telling the story. It's kind of like the Amadeus method where Salieri tells the story.
Yeah. I love that movie. Amadeus is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, so well done.
Yeah. Of course, it has all of Mozart's music in it, which, is so good. Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. Now you're getting me really fired up. I want to see this movie.
This is historical, like real history that's just like almost stranger than fiction. But,
what's another classic movie that was made by that? What was it called? The Mission, the Missionary.
The Mission. I think it was the Mission.
The Mission.
With what's his name?
It has that beautiful oboe solo in it. That became really famous. Yeah. Of course, there's been a lot of movies. Like there was did you ever see the Asian movie Ron?
Yes, that's Kurosawa is my favorite director of all time. But Ron was kind of King Lear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Kurosawa is my guy. I love his samurai movies. Like I love the way he, I would love to do for the Mayans what he did for the samurai.
Wow.
Epic, like a Mayan epic,
Oh, you could go. I think the other crazy thing that you could do, you could even try to pull in kind of UFO stuff into it if you wanted to. All the ancient alien stuff, if you wanted to get that crowd in there, you could do it. See, you could do it in a way.
Of an intellectual.
Well, you could do it in a way where it's just like one kind of subtle scene where something happens and there's some ritual that happens and some kind of, or it could be somebody has a vision of these gods coming and communing with and then they disappear. And so you don't make it overtly UFOs. It's just some gods.
There's something for sure is that they ate mushrooms and peyote, did the psychedelics, and that influenced their art and their culture and stuff.
Well, how do you explain the things like in the Andes Mountains where you've got like these paintings that are like miles long that you can only see from space type of thing? How do you explain that?
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, they're called the Nazca lines.
Yeah. I guess the other way you could explain it would be maybe in a shamanic tradition where like you take peyote and then you find your spirit animal and you're flying up above the earth as an eagle or whatever, and then you see it from an eagle's point of view, maybe. Yeah. And it doesn't have to have spaceships. It would just be some kind of shamanistic thing.
Yeah, I think I vibe more with that as far as because these are all like I think that there's my theory is it's not as exciting as Ancient Aliens. It's that we have commonalities in the human mind. Like, why did not only have you ever seen the ziggurat of Ur? It's a pyramid. It looks, and in Egypt there's pyramids, and in Mississippi there's pyramids, and in the Andes. And to me, the solution isn't aliens. The solution is that we have, why did all people build pyramids? Why do we all build houses? Why do we all wear shoes? Why do we all pray to God? I think we come to the same solutions, from different. It's
just built into our DNA.
Yeah, like Chinese, like the first emperor of China is built. His tomb is under a pyramid. Like everybody,
Of course, now they're admitting that at least in Egypt, that those pyramids are not tombs because they never found any mummies in them. All the mummies are in the valleys of the kings. Really? There's chambers, but I think the old idea was that somehow some grave robbers got into the pyramids and robbed and stripped them clean. But no one found, there's these chambers that used to be considered burial rooms, but they never found anything in them. So
Wow.
now they're like, what the heck is this thing?
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
there's a lot of theories. Some of them are fun.
yeah. The other thing that struck me is that I think somebody said that in Latin America, because everything's all overgrown with jungle now, they've estimated that they've only found maybe 5 or 10% of all the pyramids that are really there, and all the rest is still in the jungles.
Yeah, now they have that LiDAR. It's a laser that they fly over with this laser that penetrates the jungle, and they found huge cities that no one even knew existed before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
a lot of that,
I got to ask you this then. So in Latin America, then there was all these cities, gigantic stone cities, huge technology. But in Northern America, we didn't have that so much. We had mostly kind of plains Indians and stuff like that. So I wonder why it didn't go all the way up into Canada and stuff.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, the civilization. Oh, I got an interesting one there. It did go into New Mexico, where like the Pueblo Indians, even in ancient times, were building cities. Built these apartment complexes and huge structures of stone and very, very complex. But they, part of it is there's two things. One of them is agriculture. Like the rise of any civilization has to do with corn in America, or rice, or wheat in Europe, or rice in Asia. And of course, how it works with civilization is like, once you start doing agriculture, there's a surplus, you have more time to do art, you have more centralized structures, you have you can support a king or an elite that doesn't have to work. Where like the Plains Indians, for instance, they were hunter-gatherers forever.
Yeah, the buffalo.
They followed the buffalo.
Okay.
And like when you're following the buffalo, you don't lay down roots. You don't build a city if you're following a buffalo. You build a city if you're farming corn. Now, the Iroquois nation.
But what about the coastal Indians they just lived off salmon and all that?
I think so. Where you are.
Yeah.
You got the
Seattle.
Tlingits, the Quaquioodles, all the Native Americans of the Northwest Coast had a very abundant culture. They built huge houses out of redwood logs,
Long houses,
and totem poles, and they did cedar. But that's because salmon was so abundant that it acted like a grain, in the sense that you could warehouse it and have a lot of free time for art and culture building and even stratification of society, where you'd have rich and poor. But you probably know about the potlatch ceremony.
Yeah, where you trade your blankets and beads and stuff like that.
Not only trade, like it would be if you were rich, you'd throw a party, you'd give everyone who came blankets and beads, and then they would also grab more of it and throw it in the fire.
Oh,
They'd burn it. And it was like, what that did, it was kind of like a pressure release valve.
Okay.
So the rich never got too rich,
Okay.
But they, they never. I guess they did farm a little bit, but it wasn't a very agricultural society.
They could live off the land; it was abundant enough.
Yeah, they were just. But who did, like, there were people like the Indians of the southeast.
Okay.
That was the Cherokee and other.
Yeah.
They're famous for being farmers, and actually, you probably heard the Cherokee themselves had slaves.
Yeah.
They were pushed.
Every time they had wars, you would gather slaves from their enemies.
Well, then when the U.S. took over their lands, they were still said, okay. They were called the 5 civilized tribes. So they were very civilized. The southeastern America had very civilized tribes. And if you look at even their archaeology, there's some temple mounds in Mississippi that are massive. It looks like, the structure looks a lot like Mexico. Okay. So there was advanced civilization in the North America.
So this is what's blowing my mind, is like we had like this golden age of these amazing civilizations, and then it's almost like when the Europeans showed up, it's almost like they allowed themselves to be conquered, like they were too nice or something, and they let these barbarians from Europe just take over.
Well, it's hard to simplify it like that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I spend a lot of my time wrapping my head around this. Like, how did it happen? One of them is that you can't even underestimate the plague that came through. Like Columbus landed in 1492. Cortez conquered Mexico in 1520.
Okay.
When did Plymouth Rock happen? That was in the 1700 or 16 something. So it was 100 and something years after Europeans first made contact that America was settled.
Okay.
Right. So it was almost like 150 years later, or almost like some 200 years later in some cases.
Okay.
So what happened is that the diseases had time to travel. Like that stuff spread like wildfire, way ahead of. So if you ever read Ray Bradbury, like the Martian Chronicles,
Yeah, of course.
when they finally go explore Mars, they're like, "How come there's nobody here?" Well, the first explorers in the Martian Chronicles spread a disease, and by the time the second explorers came, there was no more civilization there, and that is true. If there are anthropological studies and estimates that the plagues wiped out, like I said, 70-80% of the population in some places. So
even in North America with that
even in North America.
Okay.
Like these things spread,
Wow. Okay.
And then if you remember the stories of Ponce de Leon going to Florida looking for the Fountain of Youth,
Right.
those guys spread disease. By the time the English settlers came, a lot of the population had diminished. It was whittled down because of a great plague.
So that was it. Because I know the other theory is, another theory, of course, is Christianity. Like we had this unifying idea of Christianity and the one God in the Catholic Church, and then everybody else is somehow, of course, somehow they figured out how to completely turn Jesus's teaching on its head, which was supposed to be love all humanity as yourself, and turn it into there's us who are the real people, and those aren't even humans. They're practically animals, so we can do whatever way we want with them. Somehow the church managed to come up with that one.
Well, allow me to say this, that like every Native American word for themselves, like when you say like the Cheyenne or the Cherokee or whatever,
okay,
what it always means is it translates to the people. So everybody calls themselves the people, and everyone else is not the people. They're them and we're us.
Okay, so you're saying this tribalism is just built into human beings, pretty much.
Yeah, into human beings, and what happened in the Native America, like Native Americans had been here for so long that just because you're neighbors doesn't mean you're friends, right?
Okay.
Just like Europe, the factionalization was huge.
Okay.
They could not unite against Europeans because, especially English, because they weren't united. They were never united. They were warring tribes. And it was very easy, just like Cortez had done. Like if you look at the French and Indian War, right? French and Indian War, or the Revolutionary War. Certain tribes allied with the British, certain tribes allied with Americans, or certain tribes allied with the French. It was easy to make them allies and fight against their common enemy. Like up in the Great Lakes region, you had the Huron and you had the Mohawks, for instance, or they were blood enemies forever. They hated each other.
Okay. And
they would rather make an alliance with the English than with the Huron. You know what I mean? So it was impossible for them to like unite against this manifest destiny of European immigration. Okay.
So I guess what you're saying is that the Europeans had sort of a more global view of what was going on, whereas the tribes were a little bit closer in and they kind of lived in their own little bubble, and that was their downfall.
Yep, they couldn't unite. They couldn't yeah. And if you look at the history of you probably heard of Hiawatha, right?
Uh-huh.
So Hiawatha was a great peacemaker. He went and united the tribes of the Northeast, and this had only happened like 100 years before or 200 years before Europeans came and settled. So they were blood feud as well until this great man, this great leader, came and said, "Look, we can't be fighting. We have to unite." And they reunited, and so the Iroquois are still one of the strongest. The Iroquois Confederacy is still one of the strongest tribes in the North America to keep their traditions alive, because they had already begun this process of kind of, uniting into a larger confederation, and they were able to preserve themselves because they had a huge confederation of tribes, right? Versus the smaller tribes that didn't unite, they were kind of wiped out.
Because this brings up some speeches. This might be a speech from Chief Seattle, where he talked about how, you know, the white men came and destroyed our nation and everything, but it's not just their fault, it's also our fault for allowing them to do it. We can't just blame them, it's also us. And what I got from it is like, you know, maybe we were too nice, you know, maybe we shouldn't have welcomed them, and, you know, maybe we should have been more suspicious of them, you know, and we should have seen the writing on the wall and pushed back when we had the chance, but we didn't. That's sort of what I read from that statement. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's tough. I mean, you know, what's interesting now is that Native American numbers are bouncing back. Like the wave of colonization decimated them temporarily, but they're now on the rise again.
Plus, there's all those broken treaties, Judge Bolt and all that stuff, where we just conned them.
Not a treaty that was ever honored. Like all of them were broken. Like there was this land shall be yours forever, and then like 10 years later, like never mind. The Black Hills, where they have Mount Rushmore, was supposed to be in perpetuity. Was granted in a frickin' government treaty to the Indians, and then promptly, as soon as they found gold there, they took it.
Wait, just a sec.
Never mind.
Yeah, but then you go to Animal Farm, where like all animals are created equal, except some animals are more equal than others.
Right. Right. That's I have a little rant about that. No, like, you know, like in the Civil War, what won was the proposition that all men are created equal. That's we already fought about this. And some people fought that we are not all created equal, and some people fought that we are. And you know, the United States is a tradition of like the tradition that we are following now is that all men are created equal, right?
Right.
And that's the track we're on.
Well, if you want to go really into politics, it seems like it's almost like we're turning it on our head again. Like we had Martin Luther King, who was saying, I have a dream on the day where the black man and the white man can be hand in hand, and we'll all be judged by our merits and not by the color of our skin, right?
Yep.
Today we're arguing about, well, you know, if you're Asian, then you should be given, it should be easier for you to get a job. Or if you're black, it should be easier for you to get this job. And if you're white, you have to work harder. And, you know, the scores need to be, everything needs to be tweaked to make it all an even playing field. Whoops. Oh,
wow.
Okay, there went
That's
Krishna.
not an even playing field.
I guess that means I'm not supposed to talk about this. But it's a controversial subject.
Yeah.
So it's almost like turning the whole idea upside down. And now we're actually we're practicing racism. It's just we've changed which color gets the advantage, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's affirmative action was the idea that you're gonna level the playing field by giving people advantages that were traditionally taken. All advantage was taken away from them.
Right, you're kind of undoing what society had done. We're trying to right the sins of society and systemic racism and all that, which makes kind of sense.
It kind of does. I mean, look.
But the thing is, with anything in government, whenever they come up with a good idea, if they always screw up the details, and then it ends up backfiring.
Yeah, the devil's in the details. But conceptually, it's like I get it, because it's like, okay, 500 years of slavery, 150 years of like Jim Crow, separate but equal, and then like 60 years of equality, and it's
trying to achieve equality. We never.
It's supposed to be honky dory now because they've had 60 years where there's no Jim Crow. It's like, or slavery. It's like, I don't know if that's going to cut it in 60 years. No.
Well, see, the problem is here's what my theory is, and of course, tons of people will be pissed at me, but like, if you now, okay, let's say we've got orange people and we've got purple people. And for 100 years, the orange people were on top of the heap and they were oppressing the purple people. Now we've decided that was wrong. We should now uplift the purple people. So now the purple people are on top, and now all the new orange people are pissed because the purple people are oppressing them because they get all the advantages. So you've never solved anything. You've just continued the same cycle. Instead of declaring the orange people and the purple people will be equal now and forever.
I mean, that's easy. Yeah, it's an easy declaration, but when the purple people can't get loans,
right?
know,
of course, that I mean, that's obviously
they get their house, appraised at 50% of the value. It's
right.
like,
That's crap. That's the orange people. The old school orange people are trying to maintain their authority over the purple people.
Yeah, they totally are.
That's crap.
I see that happening in this culture. It's like the people in power. I mean, it's Machiavellian. They're going to try to maintain the power. It's like, why would they give up power when they have it?
Right. See, that's why I think my theory is when we go like in the United States, we're all into racism and color of your skin and all that. But like if you go into Africa, everyone in Africa is black. But there's all kinds of shit going on, and there's still a class system.
Also in Europe, it's like everybody's white, and people don't worry about it as much.
Well, the thing is, there's a class system, but it's all based on economics. I've decided it really is just who's got the money and who doesn't.
Oh, that's really what it comes down to.
That's basically it.
Yeah, it's like there's the real divisions are those with money and those without.
Yeah, and that could be boiled down even farther to the point where you'd say it's who's got the power and who doesn't. Yeah. So anyway, wow, we've been going for a while. Okay, now let's circle all back to your latest. So for sure, I totally want to see that film about the shipwreck. That's going to be a blockbuster.
Oh, God. I've been working on that one for
$100 million budget.
Yeah, it's a three-parter.
Oh, cool. So, great. So you're not going to try to tell the total story in an hour and a half.
Well, what I see is the first story happens before Cortez lands, then when Cortez lands. But they're going to do a big Cortez series, I heard. I
was just going to think it could be like a Netflix series too.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fantastic. It'd be like Game of Thrones-ish, epic.
But of course, the trick is to do it really authentically. Like make it really historically accurate, but then still have all the drama and tell a really compelling human story.
Yeah,
people can get into.
The thing is that there's limited historical sources. You have to. You
can exaggerate, but at least have it the foundation of it be in some degree of truth, if you want to call history truth. Yeah, history in itself is just a story. But
it goes on first. Hopefully you use primary sources.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's wrap it up. So we're all your movies. Let's put links to your movies.
Okay.
And any other stuff you want to put links to down here. And then, is there anything in particular you want to pitch once and for all?
Yes, I'd like to invite people to check out my two latest rom-coms. Divorce Bait and Townhouse Confidential. They're both on demand right now, so they're for rent.
Oh, cool, yeah.
And of course, if you could check out.
In other words, you got to watch it. In other words, guys, it's excellent.
Thanks.
Wow. Okay, you know what? Well, this always happens. We didn't even talk about your wife. She's your co-creator.
She's my co-creator, my business producer, writer,
screenwriter. Yeah, maybe I'll have to have her. I could always have her come back. Yeah, and I can talk to her. Let's do that. Okay, sir. Do you watch Star Trek at all?
My cousin is executive producer of the new Star Trek on ABC. But
Strange New Worlds?
Yes.
Oh, I love that show. Yeah. I think they're rocking it.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
I'm excited for him. But I haven't
That's
actually
wonderful.
watched it. But I do love Star Trek.
Okay, so we can do Live Long and Prosper then.
Okay.
Now you're supposed to put your thumb out.
Right. Okay.
No, like that. Because I don't know if you know this, but this is actually a Jewish symbol.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy is Jewish.
I knew that. But
he borrowed this from. They do it like this, the priests, and he just moved it up like that, and that became the Spock salute.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
Live long and prosper, sir.
Likewise.
We have a wonderful talk. We're going to have to talk more, and I'll see you again soon. I'm really looking forward to your blockbuster movie about this shipwreck. That's going to be so cool.
Me too.
All right. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Pranakasha production.
fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life. For the benefit of all beings everywhere. We gotta